Agencies Drinking Beer is brought to you by Proposify, software that helps agencies streamline their proposals in the cloud and get faster sign-off.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Agencies Drinking Beer, a podcast where we interview a digital agency owner, learn valuable lessons, and get a buzz on. On this episode, we're interviewing Heather Carson from Onboardly. They're a demand marketing agency that specializes in helping funded tech startups acquire new clients. All right, well, let's just kick this off. So I have Kevin Springer here. He's my business partner. I'm Kyle Racky, and this is the first episode of our podcast.
Yes.
So, of course, nobody's listening to this. We can say whatever we want. We don't need to worry. Kevin and I used to run an agency called Headspace here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm sure nobody knows where that is if they're not from Canada. We are Canadian, except Kevin, he's American, but he lives in Canada, so he's Canadian now.
Hey.
And
I had to put that in, sorry.
Yeah, and you actually got your citizenship only a few years ago, but you probably know more about Canada than I do now.
Really?
Well, you had to take the test and,
that's true.
Know the Queen's name,
Whatever
her name was.
The hardest part was knowing who won the Stanley Cup in '75. Like, that was a really hard test, question on the test, but I got it. I nailed it.
Kevin didn't turn his phone off, so
it's off now.
Yeah, so we're very polished here. But so we ran this digital agency together called Headspace. We did a lot of design and marketing and development, and then we started this company called Proposify, where we build software for agencies for their proposals. And last year was really when things started to really pick up. We got a seed round of funding. The product started getting traction, and we're just thinking of different ways to create content that's valuable for agency owners. So we ended up putting together a video series. We called it Agencies and Offices Drinking Beer, which was actually a kind of a spoof off of the Jerry Seinfeld show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. So it kind of started as this experiment. We'd sit down and we'd videotape interviewing this agency owner, and actually we've only done about 5 of those episodes, but people liked it. I mean, it ended up getting a bit of traffic and a bit of shares. So we kind of thought, we can't really sustain doing videos every week or even every month. What we could do, there's going to be a lot of beer burps during this podcast.
Yep. I'm glad you prefaced that, because I was wondering, how you were going to recover from that big burp you just had. But it was a silent one, which was good.
Yeah, I'm not exactly Barney from The Simpsons yet, but pretty soon.
Yeah.
Anyway, we just kind of, part of the other thing too is it's been a while now since Kevin and I have actually run an agency. So I think even though we've got I think we have a lot of empathy for our clients because we've been in their shoes. There's only so many lessons now that we can there's only so much content we can produce about running an agency, because we don't really do it anymore. So we don't have this constant well of, lessons and strategies and stuff that we're trying. I think we're going to sound like dinosaurs if we keep trying to just come up with it all on our own. So that's part of the reason for this podcast, is that we can actually go to people who are currently running an agency and learn a lesson from them. They're doing it day in, day out. They're constantly learning and making mistakes and trying things out and being successful. So I think that they ultimately are going to be a lot better at providing value. Did you come up with a theme song yet for this?
I've got a couple of ideas, so it'll be a surprise for next week when we launch our first one.
I have to tell you this. I didn't tell you this before. I have 2 sons. My oldest is 7. His name's Micah, and I overheard him in his room. Do you know what he was singing? He was singing "Staying Alive" by the Bee Gees, but he replaced the word "staying alive" with "Proposify."
Wow.
So
really?
All I hear is a 7-year-old in another room going, Proposify, Proposify, and he even did like the full Proposify, did the whole thing, and I came in laughing my ass off,
There we go.
I tricked him into recording it. I actually have a recording of it.
Can we hear it?
Not right now. I have to find it. It's going to take too long. He was, you know what? He was mortified when he found out I recorded it. He was angry at me for the entire night.
You know, we're going to get him on GarageBand. We're going to record that. That's going to be our theme.
You're going to need a pretty big carrot in front of him, and metaphorically carrot.
I would
By
say,
that I mean piece of candy.
No,
you're going to need a big piece of candy.
I think a Star Wars Lego set will do it.
It could.
I mean, I've got a son now.
Angry Bird Star Wars.
Okay, let's do that.
That'll do it.
Let's do it. Angry Bird Lego, you mean?
The crazy thing, well, yeah, but I mean, I don't even know if I've told him the name of our company. I might have at one time, but I don't actually know what inspired him to just start singing "Staying Alive" and replacing it with Proposify.
So, how old is he?
7.
So he's 7, and obviously you're playing really bad 70s music in the house, if he knows what that is. You're a man after my own heart, man.
Do you know...
My generation.
I wish I could, make you feel better by saying that, but really the reason he knows the song "Staying Alive" is because we've been watching The Simpsons together. So I've been kind of reliving my youth and watching, The Simpsons and introducing him to it. And a lot of these episodes I hadn't seen since I was a kid. And one of the episodes has Disco Stew. The joke is that Homer's got a jacket with Disco Stud, but he ran out of room for the D, so it's just Disco Stew. And they're giving it away at a yard sale, and he's like, who's going to buy a jacket with Disco Stew? And there happens to be an actual guy named Disco Stew who buys the jacket.
Wow. So
anyway, Homer's singing "Staying Alive." That's why Micah knows it exists. And then, of course, I showed him the real version.
I wonder if we could take that audio clip of Homer and then put his voice in there for Proposify.
Yeah, so you just have Homer doing the part, and then a little 7-year-old Proposify.
Yeah. I think we can do that. I think we can edit that. I think we'll be able to edit that.
Yeah. We'll consider that for the second episode. So we've got a really cool interview coming up here with Heather, and I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just get into the interview.
Let's do it.
I'm really pleased to have our first guest on this podcast. It's Heather Carson from Onboardly. She runs a business with her partner Renee. They do demand marketing for startups. Thanks for being a guest on the show.
Thanks, Kyle. I'm psyched to be here. I'm psyched that I'm number one. That's amazing. First guest.
Yeah, well, normally people just kind of build up over time and then they have the bigwigs on, but we're starting off, right to the top.
Totally. I love it. I'm game. This is great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. It's exciting to have you here. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about what Onboardly is all about?
Absolutely. So Onboardly is a demand marketing agency, and from what I understand, anyway, I think we're the first to use demand marketing in a consistent business context. So we like to say that we coined that term, but the idea of behind demand marketing is really, our job as marketers, our job as PR professionals is to create and generate demand for products and services. And we get really hung up, or we felt like everyone gets really hung up on whether something is or isn't PR or is or isn't social media. And there's so many buzzwords being thrown around and associated with them. So what we decided is that we're going to come out and say, we're a demand marketing firm. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox. Ultimately, we have a staff of 7 and a number of amazingly talented freelancers who pitch in. So we don't price ourselves, inexpensively by any stretch of the imagination. I truly believe we've hired the best in the business, but still, we have to be able to justify every single one of those dollars. Because if they don't feel the startup space, as I'm sure you know, is really small. So if we can't justify having every single client walk out our door really happy, that gets around really quickly. So, I want everyone to be singing our praises and saying that was the best money we ever spent.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Sorry. We've known each other too long. We say the same things, finish each other's sentences.
That's awesome.
But, also, like, most of the listeners on this podcast are going to be agency owners like yourself. And so I think that kind of makes a lot of it's a good thing to talk about is it's a smart market you're going after because you're going after mostly VC-funded startups. And I know when we ran our agency, and I feel like we're going to be saying that a lot through the course of this podcast. Back in the day when we ran our agency, that was always the thing at the back of your mind is, this client who wants to hire me, do they have a budget? Am I going to do a lot of work and then put an invoice through and worry about getting paid? But it's a smart move to kind of go after a group of people who just, their bank account just got filled with maybe $1 million in VC funding. At least for a little while, they're not going to hurt for cash, and they need to spend it, and they need to invest those dollars into marketing.
They do. They really need to. And it's actually interesting because, of course they need to invest in product, but, they really do need to invest in marketing. And their investors are typically saying, what are your marketing plan? How are you going to get the word out there? What is your visibility strategy? And they need to have an answer, because now they answer to people. So, it's not just they're working on a side gig on, at home on weekends. This becomes very serious once they take that funding. And, they have a board of advisors. And so indirectly, we actually become accountable to those people as well, because the minute we don't perform the invest day, not only to the founder, you're doing a bad job, but who are these crazy people that you've hired that aren't delivering either? So we really need to make sure that now we kind of have a lot of stakeholders to keep happy. But when we do our job right, the great residual impact of that is that the investors are happy because they're seeing their portfolio company gain traction. And as a result, the investors are telling people within their investment community that if they ever have portfolio companies that need this kind of help, that fit in this space that makes sense for us to work within, that maybe they might want to give us a call too. Our terms are net zero. They always have been since day one, since we opened the doors. We always get every month payment upfront, and if it doesn't come through, within a couple of days before the beginning of the month, we put a hold on the work, because that is a huge issue. That I think a lot of agency owners experience is just waiting 60, 90 days sometimes for payment. And we're small too, and you never know if they might allocate that budget somewhere else. So we have to be really mindful of that.
That's really smart.
You've just become my hero.
That's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of you and Renee and your company, is because you obviously put a lot of time and thought into choosing a very defined niche, as opposed to a lot of agencies who will kind of take work from any company that hires them. And when you do that, of course, if you want to, I guess, get McDonald's in your portfolio or Walmart or one of these huge brands, or even just a government client, a lot of times they won't pay you net zero. They'll pay you net 90. And if you don't like that, you don't get their work.
Totally. I think niche is the way to go. I mean, there are so many, we could talk for hours and hours about my philosophy on a lot of these things, but, I think niche over broad any day. And it's not to say that we would never go after a bigger company, but it would always be ones that are like-minded in the way that they approach things, built on a lot of trust, built on a lot of transparency. And those are, again, sound very buzzwords. They sound like big buzzwords, but it's so important. Because I don't want to change our business processes, and it's amazing how not a single person, with the exception of actually one sort of more traditional company who had a startup as part of a subsidiary of theirs, came back to us and questioned net zero. It's been 3 years, and one person has questioned it. And it's just because when you're confident about the way you're delivering it, when your reputation is solid and people want to work with you, I think people have a hard time asking about money. They don't even like talking about money. Most creative types are really, almost humble about their skill set to some extent. Like, oh, would you mind paying this invoice today? I know our graphic designers are like that. We pay them right away, but once I've forgotten an invoice and it went for like 90 days, no one even called me. And I said, I'm like, why didn't you just ask? I forgot. Well, no, we knew you're busy. And, talk about money. If you can really honestly talk about it from day one and have it not be something that you kind of have to skirt around, it makes life so much easier.
You're drinking Stella. Excellent choice.
Yeah, it's leftover Christmas beer. I'm more of a wine person, admittedly, but I thought, given the fact that it's agencies drinking beer podcast, I should probably crack open a beer. So my husband won't notice it missing.
There's the difference between, I guess, you don't have any bros working, Onboardly, so that's why it can be January 23rd and you still have Christmas beer.
Yeah, exactly. We are 6 full-time women. We have 3 other ladies who work with us part-time. And it's funny. It's not that we have anything against bros, to your point. They're great. And we've had a couple come and go and help us out a little bit. But it just seems like we've turned into this really interesting, dynamic, female-led organization, and we just attract more women than we do men.
Yeah.
Our clients are mostly men, though. So
that's been my goal in life, is to attract more women than men, but it hasn't working. Good job, by the way.
Well, you're welcome to come visit anytime. I've got some really nice single ones too. So.
Well, and it's funny you say that. Like, it's not that we have a problem with men or anything, and I think it's kind of funny, not to get into to gender issues or anything, or maybe that's interesting. I don't know, but that you even have to feel apologetic about it, because how many startups? Our startup is completely men. Not that we obviously wouldn't hire women. Of course we would. We just happen to be an all male company, and there's a lot of companies like that. But it's almost, do you ever feel that need to kind of preface it and say, we're all women, but of course it's not designed that way. We just happen to attract more. I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
That's weird. I guess maybe in my subconscious somewhere I did feel that, because I did say, oh, it is not by design, and I think it's just we've been, so many of us have been programmed to be so, I don't even know what the right word is. It's, we're so conscientious these days of any form of sexism or any form of, gender inequality, that by default, when it feels like maybe it was by design, or it could potentially have been by design, maybe it's the polite Canadian in me, actually. I just feel like I've got to go back and be like, very clear, we like boys too.
Canadians need to be more like Bill Maher, man. I mean, be politically incorrect, because at the end of the day, just got to go with what you got going on.
Yeah. I don't think we scare away the guys, but I know that we did have one, and he eventually just was like, I can't handle this anymore. And it wasn't because of the work. So I don't know, maybe it was us. I don't know.
I think that's the only option left on the table, isn't it?
It must be. I don't know. No, he was great. We still keep in touch with him. We love him, but he just had a different opportunity, like more. But like he couldn't handle like the mood swings in the office or something.
I'm glad you said that, because you can get away with that.
You can't say that.
No.
I can. You can't. Yeah.
No. And actually, we're working out of the Volta space today, which I know you know about that. For the listeners, Volta is a startup. I guess what would you call a startup house, or a shared work environment for
co-working space.
Exactly, for tech startups here in Halifax. And one of the startups in here is Caitlin. I'm going to mess up her last name. Bourgeon?
Yeah.
It's a French name.
Bourgeon, I think.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're from New Brunswick, of course. You can pronounce it. But she actually has a startup called Swapskis, which is, kind of like a bartering website for women. And it's funny because her poster's here on the Volta walls, and it says something on it like unapologetically female focused. So it's funny. We actually had a great call with Caitlin 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. She just reached out and wanted to pick my brain about a few things. Myself and Renee, actually, we had a 2-on-1 call, which was a lot of fun. She's doing some great things, and I think in her particular mindset, it's there aren't. And I truly believe this. There aren't enough women in tech. I don't know what the apprehensiveness is for a lot of people. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons. But I do really, as someone who grew up, I grew up in this really interesting space where a lot of my uncles were developers, and my grandfather, and very few people will say like their grandfather introduced them to computers and to electronics, but my grandfather had worked for IBM for a while, and so he had in the early day computers, and he wanted me to go to get like a computer science degree, and so I was really around a lot of positive influences in the technology space growing up. So for me, it was always like, of course I'm going to be in tech. Why would I not be? This is fun. I love computers. I realized that my personality was a little more. I was better with my personality than I was with my coding skills. Let's just say that. So I decided that I would work in technology PR eventually, but I did set off to get a computer science degree at one point. Yeah. I think about it now, and it's kind of funny, but it's so for me, I never saw it as a male
dominant industry in any way, shape, or form until I showed up in my first computer science 101 class in college, and me and two other women in a room of 100 people. But I'm happy for Caitlin, and I'm happy for Swapskis, because I think, any company that talks, at least has the conversation that gets more women into the notion of tech and swapping and helping really propel their entrepreneurial journey forward, makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and Caitlin, oh no, I'm getting echo back.
It's all right.
Okay, it just messes me up. I was going to say that Caitlin is a marketer herself, and where you work with a lot of startups, how many would you say, maybe in terms of just a rough guess, in terms of ratio, would be the co-founders are highly technical but don't know anything about marketing or PR or writing, versus the ones that kind of have that full gamut of marketing, product, coding, technology, all that stuff?
Oh my gosh, very, very few. A lot of our founders, you see those very traditional founding teams. You see the business person that's a little less technical, but really good at people, really good at, the razzle dazzle that goes along with, lobbying for investment and those types of things, and keeping staff motivated and happy. And then there's typically a technical co-founder who's, a little bit more, backroom, a little more savvy, in terms of the technology components. Typically not as outgoing. I hate to typecast, because there's a ton of different scenarios that are quite different. But that would be the most typical. I wouldn't say that the founders don't necessarily have marketing ability. Some flat out say, like, oh, heck no, this is not my thing. But most of them just realize that if they're going to run a business, they do not have time to do all the rest of it. It is, one of the things that when we approach clients, when we talk to them about the value proposition that we bring to the table, what keeps coming up consistently is, you guys extend my productivity. Because there's no way, they're smart people. They can Google it as fast as we can. They can these days, pretty much everything's online. If they want to take a course on, how to set up basic landing pages, a course on writing, a course, if they want to outsource their content creation, they could figure out a system internally that will eventually work. They want to get where they need to go faster, so they want to trust someone like us who already knows the steps and the systems and the people and the process, and they want their productivity extended, because they can't work on marketing full time when they need to be working on ops and development and scaling and product and everything else. So most of them don't, not that they couldn't do it, they're brilliant people. It's just that it doesn't make sense for them to spend their cycles on it.
In your opinion, if one of your clients, let's say you took two clients, and one of them was that, maybe I'll just stereotype them and say kind of your coding geek who doesn't know about writing, doesn't know about marketing, and then another person who is with a different company, and he or she is kind of has that full gamut and wants to write some of the blog articles and wants to, test some landing pages and work with you guys. I mean, in your, and maybe it's a hard question to answer, but do you think that maybe a startup founder should just be focused on product and development and let you guys just run with the marketing? Or do you think that it would give them a leg up if they actually got involved and started helping create content and work with you guys that way?
The best thing for us, like the ideal scenario, is when the founder has enough wherewithal to understand why we're doing it and the value that it's bringing to the table. It's great when they have ideas. I mean, we want them to fire us topics that they want to write about. We want them to really help us understand what's important to them, what makes them feel passionate. Because a lot of cases, it's not just the product. We're not soliciting publications to do, full feature length reviews of the products all the time. What we're trying to do is create this feeling of thought leadership. So it's either the founder, the founding team, individuals within the organization as a whole. We want to identify, or we want to help position them as thought leaders. So we really need to extract information from those core people in order to be able to do our jobs. Otherwise, what I'm doing is, essentially creating a falsified persona for these people. And when it's not authentic, eventually I'm going to have to get them on a media interview, or eventually I'm going to have to put them in front of a reporter. And if that doesn't translate, then all of the work that we've done, the authenticity is gone.
It sounds like you do a lot of work up front, just pre-qualifying your leads to make sure they're people that you want to work with. I mean, we've had our surprises in the past. Have you ever had that occasion where you think someone's just going to be an awesome client, and then you get maybe a month or two into it, and all of a sudden you realize they're a different person than you thought?
Totally. Yeah. It's that happens to everybody. I mean, I don't, and we're not apologetic about it. That's fine. It's going to happen, but we do spend a lot of time on pre-qualification. I think it's the smartest thing you can do for any agency. If you're really true to your roots, if you're able to do good work, if you consistently do good work because you're working with people that are great and you have a lot of mutual respect, your reputation will carry you a really long way. But if you start grasping at dollar bills everywhere because oh, this person is going to be a bit of a jerk, but they're willing to pay us, what ends up happening is ultimately you may do bad work, or that person's going to ride you and just not be a fun client to be around. It's going to discourage morale. Things, so many things can happen from choosing a bad client. And, the idea is if you do a really good job pre-qualifying, you'll be set. Have I made mistakes? Yes. Have I thought someone was going to be super cool and they've ended up being, a little bit difficult to work with or non-responsive? Sure. That's not a bad situation because we can kind of go back to them and say, you're still cool, but we need you to do these 3 things. And if you're not able to do it, we're going to have to move on. And that ends up being okay. It's when you get greedy, that's when there's trouble. And that's the mistake that we learned the hard way about a year ago. A lot of people wanted to work with us. And I just thought oh my gosh, this is a miracle. This is so wonderful. And we signed on more clients than we could accommodate. And, the work was good still, but our team was really stressed out about it and it kind of burned everybody out. And that's the other thing I would be really mindful for is pre-qualify the ones that your people are going to want to really work on too, because a couple of them that weren't maybe let's say as exciting as the others. It took a lot of work for us to motivate people to not only find extra energy for the added course or added client load, but also to find the added energy for stuff that they weren't excited about. So nowadays, the final step in the pre-qualification for us, which is interesting. And when I'm talking to a prospect on the phone, I do most of our sales. Renee is really focused core on marketing. So I do a lot of our sales. And one of the things I say to them is they're excited and I'm excited and we had a great call. And then I say, so the next step in our process, I'm going to reach out to our core team and I need to get their blessing on moving forward. And the other person ends sorry, what? Don't you run the company? And I'm like, yeah, but it's really important to me that our core team, so that's not everyone, that's, our director of marketing, our director of PR, director of client services, the few core people, that they look at this opportunity and vet it too. Because I don't do all the work for the clients. I do a fraction, a small fraction of the work with the clients. Ultimately, it's our team that spends their days really chugging away at making sure that these projects are a success. So if they don't think it's something that they can allocate a ton of their time to and really want to work on, we don't take it. Because I truly believe, and a lot of people may disagree with me. They may say an agency is an agency. It's your job to get creative. It's your job to find ways to like your clients. I really believe that if you don't believe in the product you're representing, you are not going to do a good job, especially when you're their publicist. So you really have to like it. So I run it by them. If I get the seal of approval, they're not gonna. It doesn't have to be all Sandals resorts that we're representing, free vacations for everybody, but they do have to think it's cool and or at least see themselves or someone they know using the product. And when they do, then I go back to the client and they're like, oh wow, these people are hard to work with.
Well, yeah, it's almost having worked in a few agencies over the years, it becomes a little bit of a cliche that you've got this salesperson, I'll say sales guy because usually it's been a sales guy who goes out and gets the client, and maybe they don't have enough budget for the kind of work they want to do, but he just kind of oversells it and sells them champagne on a beer budget kind of thing, and then it just all falls on the creative team or the production team to be like, okay, now we've got to try to build this crazy thing within a very small or a very short amount of time. So that's almost unfortunately become a bit of a cliche in the agency world, because so often sales is separated from the actual, this, once the salesperson is done and the deal's signed, they're out looking for the next one. They don't actually have to manage the client after that. So that sounds like a really smart way that you involve the team up front in the sales process, and I've never heard that before.
Yeah, we've got to. I mean, I just, and maybe it won't always be that way. Maybe we'll get to the size, because, we have big dreams and we want to grow, and there's lots of stuff that we still want to check off our list, but it may not always be that way. But I really hope it is, because I just think buy-in from a leadership perspective is the most important thing that founders overlook. It's really easy to say, I'm the boss, they work for me. If they want to keep getting paid, well, they better do this work and it better be good, right? So it's really easy to adopt that mentality. What's more challenging, and I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but what I find a lot easier to do is, a lot harder to do, but much more worth doing, is having the team feel like they're part of this decision making, having them feel like what they do really matters, and their opinion is as valuable, if not more valuable, and in some cases, when it comes to the client selection, as mine. If they don't feel energized by the work, look, I used to work at a traditional agency and I had to market toilet paper. What is the most boring thing that people don't talk about? Toilet paper. Try to come up with a creative way to market toilet paper.
I hate the one that you see now with the bear, man. The one with the bear, though, it's so bad.
It is bad. I had the kittens. It's funny you say that, but
because I know the agency.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So I worked on the kitten brand, and it wasn't like I'm saying, they're a great client, and I built great rapport with our clients themselves. But it's just one of those things where, how do you ask someone to get up every day and be really motivated by figuring out how you can get one more percentage of sales in a Walmart big box store through marketing toilet paper?
Or wiping your butt with a kitten. I don't see that.
No, I don't. But how good would that be, though? Just
it would be soft. It would be very soft.
Just kidding.
That ad would win awards if a kitten got.
Well, who's ahead of us in some ways. If you look at the old Warner Brothers, remember the one with Pepe Le Pew, and remember the cat. The cat actually ended up getting a streak along the back, and it looked like a skunk. So the skunk fell in love with the cat. Do you remember that?
It was Sylvester, wasn't it, or something? No,
that was Pepe Le Pew.
Le Pew. I remember that. No, and they thought it was a cat. It was paint. It was a white paint thing went down his back. From. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I just, my point is, if the clients are cool, if your team's bought in, it's a lot easier, but challenging from a leadership perspective for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're probably running out of time, so I wanted to really thank you for being present for this and kind of dealing with all of our little foibles as we work through getting the hang of the podcast. But thank you very much for being here.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah.
This is fun.
And maybe just quickly kind of give us a little taste of what's next for Onboardly. Where do you see 2015 going for you guys?
World domination, really. But
of course.
The biggest thing for us moving into 2015 is growth. Continuing to do amazing work. We have a big target to essentially increase our client load by double before the end of the year, and our team as a result of it as well. So anybody out there in agency land looking to make a progressive move, give me a call. No, just kidding. Not using this opportunity to poach. Maybe not.
You've got to use every opportunity you have.
Absolutely. So we're looking to grow. We're moving into a brand new office March 1st, which is great. I'm so excited about it. We've been we have built a distributed team, so we're intentionally designed that we can work from anywhere. But it's just so great to have a cool vibe, and it's a lofty space in downtown. So that's going to be awesome. Big focus moving into 2015 on educating. We really believe that the best way to help nurture the community and be part of it beyond just selling them a service is to provide them with the tools and resources that they need to get started on their own before they can afford us. So you'll see more more free resources, more downloads, more guidebooks, more mini courses, where you can learn do-it-yourself PR for a couple $100 as opposed to thousands of dollars working with us. So a lot of stuff like that is going to be really important for us, because in a perfect world, we'll really nurture the babies who just have ideas and 1 and 2 person teams, but want to get some of the basics nailed down. And then when they get to the point where they're, to your point, they've got a budget to work with, we're top of mind for them. So that's a big thing for us too. So I'll take this very brief opportunity to plug our PR course that is currently online for sale for a whopping $197, but it's 6 modules and 6 workbooks, and it teaches you a lot of good stuff.
I personally have experienced this workbook because you gave me a little sneak peek at it when you were kind of testing the waters, and it is excellent. And I'm not just saying that because you're a guest on our show. That's like bedside table reading just to study every night, because it's something that and I think we probably fit into your target audience somewhat. It's probably one of our weakest points is PR, because Kevin's better at it than I am, but there's certainly so much that we can learn even just from this workbook. It's got everything in there that we kind of need to learn about how to write our story, how to approach, media influencers and journalists. It's really got everything.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, and it'll iterate over time. If you get some feedback, we'll make some adjustments. But it's meant not a big moneymaker for us, but definitely a way to cover our costs on its production, and just making sure that the people that want the information get it and are able to help themselves. Because, the reality is the more younger companies can help themselves get to a certain point, the faster they're going to get to a point where they can work with us. So it's all about giving back. It's all about contributing to a bigger ecosystem, and I think it's going to be super successful. So I'll maybe when the podcast you guys can include a link or something if it's interesting.
Yes, this will be a link in the show notes. I'll get that from you. Thanks again. I think this is going to be a huge value to anybody listening, and all the best to you and your team in 2015.
Thanks, Heather.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for everything, and have an awesome rest of your day.
Yeah, same to you.
See ya.
Okay.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye. Well, what do you think of that interview?
Oh, it was excellent.
Heather's really good, isn't she?
She's amazing. And, if we were still running an agency, I learned a lot of lessons just from, her focusing on one vertical and things that we really we wanted to do. And she's brilliant. And what a great audience to go after, too, or a great client base.
Yeah, it'd be a fun one.
Yeah,
for sure.
It would be.
And you know what? We actually had a lot of startups when we ran Headspace. We had a lot of startup companies come to us, but usually we were helping them build a product, not market it.
Near the last couple of years,
Pardon me, beer burp.
But at the beginning, it was all government and tourism and a lot of these industries that were quite challenging.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this was the end of the first episode. I hope everybody's liked it. I hope you listened to it if you've gotten this far. Please rate us on iTunes. That's going to help us start promoting this and getting more people listening to it. Appreciate you being with us on this ride as we go forward. And, I'm going to steal from the best. They say if you're going to steal from the best. I'm going to steal from Paul Boag. Kevin knows I've been a fan of Boag World for many, many years. They're at least for several years rated the #1 web design podcast in the world. A couple of Brits with their, we can't emulate that sort of self-deprecating British humor, but we can do our best. And one thing they always did was they always went out with a joke. So I'm going to throw this on Kevin to tell us a joke at the end of every episode.
I wish you gave me the heads up on this. Let's see. Well, we're
just
talking.
Pull it out of.
Okay, how about this?
Thin air.
We were talking about startups, so we got to think of being starving and working lean. How about this one? I'm going to do a really bad Rodney Dangerfield impression.
Oh, great.
Oh, I'm so poor I can't pay attention. My credit's so bad I can't pay with cash. There you go.
Wow.
It ain't easy being me.
It isn't easy. Well, that's it. We're going to close out now. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.